My name's Andrew, and I'm an advocate, and I work in the northwest of England. A housing association referred an 85-year-old single man to us because he was experiencing some problems with his neighbours, and they wanted independent support to enable him to go through their own complaints process. When I met the gentleman, he was one of the most charming men I've ever met, but had lived most of his life in institutional settings, but had never been given a label. He remembered his days when he was a young man travelling around Europe with his family, and he'd met Adolf Hitler, although he understood Hitler was a bad man, he'd kept a love of all things German, and he collected model aeroplanes, and he had a lot of things in his life that were Germanic, and this, he felt, was causing some issues with his neighbours because they thought he was a Nazi. When we started working with the Housing Association, it became quite clear that the gentleman was exceptionally independent, but didn't understand the nature of working within a society and working with people other than those people who used to deliver things for him. Over the course of about 6 months, we worked with the gentleman to try and find a location that he felt be more appropriate, and working with a number of housing associations who were really empathic about him. But the difficulty for the gentleman was that he always wanted to be a place where he could display his love, his hobbies, and he felt that was one of the main reasons that he wanted to be around the area he was in. It took us about 18 months of working with him to ascertain really what his true wishes were, which eventually we found by finding a place outside of the borough where he was currently living and working with some really empathic other professionals who were able to support him. But the main aim of his life was always to be independent, but to have people around who he could show off his things to. And he eventually found a community of people that were really all quite artistic. And over a course of 2 years that we have continued to work with him, he's settled in and now actually is becoming a real part of that community. But he still retains the love of all his things that were Germanic. And while I was working with him, I used to drive a BMW, and I still have the photograph of him stood next to the BMW with the largest Cheshire Cat smile on his face, because he'd had 5 minutes in the car with me on the way to a visit a property. And that, I think, is possibly the best result of an outcome that we've got, is that although he's not changed who he is, he's learned that he can live with other people because the work of advocacy and his understanding that other people are there to help.